Hello, my name is Sam Feltham and welcome to this very special edition, and it's very, very special seeing that I'm back from a week off, but also because we have the two most amazing people in the world of low carb, high fat health at the moment. It is organisers and hosts of the Old Mutual Health Convention in Cape Town, South Africa, from a couple of weeks ago, Karen Thomson and Professor Timothy Noakes. How you going, guys?
Good, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, all good, all good. I was terribly disappointed. I didn't manage to make it to Cape Town myself for what seemed like the most amazing conference, probably going to be in medical history, I'd say, because he had all of the top-notch doctors and professors and experts in this field of low-carb, high-fat health coming into one place to kind of, launch this onto the world. So for anybody that isn't familiar with yourselves, how did you guys get to know each other, and how did you set up this conference?
Sam, I'm not responsible, so I'll get Karen to speak first because she took all the risks, and I was the chicken heart who said, "You'll never do it. You're stupid. You're mad. I don't want to be involved." And she drove it until it happened. So let Karen have the first word.
Okay, so how we met is essentially through my grandfather. Even though he wasn't alive, it was kind of like Professor Noakes had decided to study medicine because of my grandfather, who was too far out. I saw a program he did when he talked about sugar and addiction, which is obviously my passion. And so we met and we got together, and then I saw how much flack Professor Noakes was getting in South Africa from his critics, and just really from anybody with an opinion, which is really annoying, as you know.
Yeah.
So I decided that it was about high time that we organized a conference where people come and present the scientific studies that form the foundation of this way of life, because it isn't junk. It solves so many of our lifestyle-related illnesses, as you know. So we decided to invite 4 people to start with.
You decided. Nothing to do.
I decided to invite 4 people, and in Prof's defense, he was very supportive the whole time in front of me. Maybe behind my back, not so much. But so I invited Dr. Westman, Dr. Finney, Dr. Wortman, and Jimmy Moore, and they all said yes immediately. Then Prof went to Australia to do a tour, and suddenly he fell off.
So when I went to Australia, everyone all of a sudden wanted to come to Cape Town to the conference. And they all volunteered their time at no charge. They said, "We'll pay for our travel." So all of a sudden, we had 17 speakers and a tiny venue for 200 people. So I said, "Karen, this doesn't make sense. Now we've got to move big." So in Cape Town, you either have a 200 or a 400 or a 600 seater venue. So Karen said, "Well, we have to go 600. So we went to the Cape Town Convention Center. And then I said, "So Karen, how much is it going to cost us?" And so she gave me a figure which made me collapse on the ground. And I said, "So Karen, who's going to pay for all of this?" The day after the conference, and we have got to pay 4 million rand. Where's Prof? You always tell me to believe in the outcome. I believe in the outcome. Now it's about time you believe what you speak about all the time and believe in the outcome. We will find the money. It's going to happen. So for the next 6 weeks, I didn't sleep because all I could see was this 4 million rand order, and Tim Noakes going to jail because he can't pay the 4 million rand. So anyway, eventually, it just so happened I was giving some talks for the Old Mutual company, and they used the word "the real person revolution" or something like that. And they were marketing to their people who sell their products. And I said, "Hold on, you've stolen our name." And in fact, they sold 150 of my books. I had to sell our book, The Real New Revolution. So I said, you're promoting the real meal revolution. Why don't you think about coming on board and funding this? And just by the way, Sam, when I spoke at their conference, they asked, how many of you are on the Bantam diet? So now there was, let's say there were 500 people, and these are all people who are selling their products. On the first day, it was 20%, and the second, it was 35% of people in Cape Town on the Bantam diet selling these old new products. And so I thought, that's give you a good idea of how far we've been in penetration. Anyway, eventually, Karen, through her contacts, and you must understand she is a very intelligent, clever woman who understands contacts.
Okay, then.
And she knew one person who knew how the company thought. And she went to him and she said, listen, how do we pitch so that at the end of the month, we're not in jail? And he said, listen, you've got to go and ask for the whole amount, the total amount. And because we were thinking of asking for a little bit of it. And so we went in and we asked for the total amount. And then it was like that. It was exactly what they expected. And so eventually they gave us a huge amount of money, and we could then sleep properly and really organize the conference at the level that we had hoped we'd be able to achieve.
It's been a fantastic thing, because I remember you, Karen, kind of talking about it kind of probably 6 months ago, maybe, you talking about it, but then just kind of seeing it grow as it did, because I first became aware of it when it was probably about 10 speakers, and then obviously it grew up to 17, and you got, as I say, the most amazing speakers there, from Dr. Jay Wortman, Dr. Eric Westman, Steve Finney, Andreas Enfelt, Zoe Harkham, and Asim Malhotra as well. It's probably the greatest gathering of low carb banting style diet experts ever put together, basically. So with that being said, what was it like having all of these people there for almost a week?
Well, it was amazing, and a lot of people who attended the conference all spoke, said it was the best conference they'd ever been to in their lives.
Amazing.
And in my opinion, the first major conference I ever went to was a landmark study in 1976. It was called the New York City Academy of Sciences Conference on the Marathon. And that was right at the beginning of my career. And it was exactly the same. They had all the world authorities on marathon running. And it's never been repeated, that conference. And it was just an amazing conference. And I said to Karen, this is the best conference I've been to, was her conference. Since that one. So at the two ends of my career, I had these two fabulous conferences. And a number of people, Dr. Michael Reeves, who gave two fabulous talks, which people will just be amazed to see, because he's such a special speaker anyway. He said it was the best conference he ever attended in his life. And this is a man in his 70s. And there were one or two other people who said exactly the same. And one of our local critics said it provided the most evidence-based evidence that we've ever seen in any medical conference anywhere. So we got the message out that we're serious about forward.
It is incredible, and kind of I was following the conference as it was going on Instagram and Twitter, following the hashtags, and especially Jimmy Moore and Emily Maguire as well. Those guys did a real good job in terms of taking photos and then kind of tweeting straight away what they were saying. And it was all evidence. And as you say there, even your critics said it was the most evidence kind of based that they had attended. So from that, have any of your critics kind of either come back at you with a rebuttal, or have they kind of put their hands up and sort of said, okay, you're starting to make sense now?
Let me make another point, that because the conference was funded by an insurance company and there was no industry involvement, that also was noted by people, because there was absolutely no influence the funders on the information. And so that's the first one. Secondly, there was very wide coverage of the conference in Cape Town, and the leading newspaper, the Cape Town, which 4 months before had carried a letter from my own faculty dissociating themselves from me and the Banting diet, publicly stating that the university is a serious research institution and that there is no evidence for this Banting diet, and therefore the faculty distracts itself from myself. There was a lead editor for saying he was wrong, and for Karen Thomson for saying what she'd been through in her life. And they said, all we asked was the doctors to look at the facts and to question. And they said, that's what we have to do. And I think that's been the message. So there's been an enormous amount of positive coverage, and our critics have shut up. All the people who've been worrying us on Twitter and so on, all the trolls, have suddenly gone quiet.
And because they were also invited, Sam, we invited them to come. You know, we said to them, you know, we'd even be willing to pay for your flights and accommodation to get you here. And only one of them turned up. So there were some other guys who, once this video comes out, will tweet that they were willing to come. And yes, there were 2 people willing to come. It just didn't work out with, you know, the time scale. But nobody else was willing to come. And you know what they said in their emails is they don't really disagree with this way of life. So everything that they've been saying publicly, they then undermined in their own emails to them. To me, sorry. So that was really, really interesting that people are so willing to stand up in a little group of sheep behind the media and have an opinion, but really they have no sense of their own belief. And that's what I'm always interested in. All these critics and people that stand up against us, what are their beliefs? Because they're very quick to criticize, but really, what is at the core of their belief system?
Yeah, I think Karen makes a very good point there, because there was one critic who's been incredibly critical about me, and in fact, he has 14 separate blogs telling the world why Tim Noakes is such a bad scientist.
Wow. And
he was present, and my final talk was a complete attack on all my critics and saying why they're wrong. I said, either I'm wrong or they're wrong, and I gave all evidence why they're wrong. He didn't report what I'd said. So although he was critical of some of the speakers, he didn't have the courage to say, okay, Tim Noakes completely destroyed all the arguments of his critics, and this is how he did it. And so that wasn't reported. In a sense, they had to avoid it. They had to avoid it because the evidence is so clear that had he got down that route, he would have disproved those 14 blogs that he has on his
website. It's rather incredible that people are still kind of pushing this idea aside. And as you say, Karen, though, as well, at the same time, they're not completely against the idea of this lifestyle and this solution that we're presenting. But they're just, they're just criticising for criticising's sake and not really providing an actual solution to the problem, which I feel like we are. Which is quite funny.
Absolutely. So they remain stuck in the problem, and they like to just swim around in the problem instead of finding a solution. So please come and present another solution. But by all means, like, everybody would be open to listen. But this thing works. And luckily, our opinions aren't funded by any specific industry, so we can speak the truth.
That's right. And looking at the food that was actually available at the conference as well, it looked like probably the best conference food I'd ever seen, because I've been to a few conferences myself in terms of kind of trying to trying to look at what the enemy is kind of saying and things, and it is a constant barrage of low-fat crisps or chips and kind of low-fat yogurts, 0% fat yogurts, but then also cans of cola and chocolate bars and things like that. I mean, it's absolutely bizarre that dietitian conferences have these foods, but your foods was pure real food, Banting style, low carb amazingness.
It was, and it was actually thanks to the chef of the convention center. We had very, very little to do with it. that guy, because of reading the Real Meal Revolution and hearing what Professor Noakes and them had to say, was able to come up with the most phenomenal creation because he had access to knowledge and because he was willing to embrace a little bit of a different paradigm. And now they're actually adopting this mainly for other conferences. So this was the first time they piloted it. It was the best response they've had with regards to food, and it's created a very positive change.
Sam, what amazes me is people just don't get it. They don't get it that you can't drink Coca-Cola and be healthy, and they just don't get it that if you eat any of it, it's wrong. And so I went to America to a conference recently organized by another organization that is leading the fight against obesity and diabetes. And what rubbish were we fed? Exactly that. There was Coca-Cola being sold. And I said, you people just don't get it.
Yeah.
You can't eat this food and be healthy.
And it's just kind of really being a bit two-faced about the whole thing, really, isn't it? In terms of, they might say, okay, sugar is a real problem and things like that, but then they'll provide Coca-Cola and chocolate bars and even sugary cereals at conferences. And it's like, well, you're saying one thing, but then you're doing another. You need to kind of walk the talk as well as talking the talk as well. It's absolutely crazy. And obviously you guys were talking the talk and walking the walk, which is what people want. They want people with integrity and honesty to move this movement forward, which you guys are clearly doing. So for both of you, what was it like just kind of wrapping things up towards the end of the conference and kind of sort of seeing how well it actually went? That must have been quite a moment of realization for both of you.
Yeah, so it was literally, I mean, I didn't really want the conference to end. I kind of felt like I'd met like my long lost family, and finally I had them all together, and I didn't want to let them go. It was amazing. It really was so special. And I mean, to be completely honest, I did not think that it was going to be as much of a success as it was. For us to be featured on the front page of the top local newspaper, commending us for the effort, and specifically Old Mutual, the sponsor, was a huge privilege. And to see people stand up and give Professor Noakes a standing ovation, whereas a couple of years before he has been through hell. Like, him and his family have been through such a tough time, and it infuriates me. It really does. But to see him getting a standing ovation literally made me cry. Isn't that hard? But yeah.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And for
no,
you,
it was very special. Yeah, it was very special, and I think that one moves on and one forgets about all the agony and the discomfort. And I only deal with the future anyway. I'm always working in the future, so I forget what happened in the past. But it was really special, and so many people were so thankful for what we've done for them. The doctor came up to me and he said, Dr. Noakes, I went on your diet and I followed it, and I put one patient on, and the patient did so well that she wrote me a letter. And I now hand that letter to all my patients who are overweight or diabetic. And he said, that is the first time a patient has ever written to thank me in my whole career. And then I realized I get letters like that 5 a day or more. And then I realized how privileged I really am. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. It's extremely powerful as well, especially kind of for doctors as well, to see that positive feedback of what they're actually advising their patients, sees a real benefit for them, and so much so that they're willing to write down their thoughts in a letter and send it to them. That doesn't happen kind of every day, and it doesn't happen to every doctor. But if it happened more and more, then that encouragement will help kind of fuel enthusiasm and passion back into the profession, probably, I'd have thought. So yeah, that's hopefully that will continue.
Yeah, we get feedback all the time from either patients or doctors saying that one person introduced them and then to a community And all of a sudden people took notice, and then they tried it, and then it just spreads like wildfire. I was at dinner last night at a rugby conference, and most rugby players are not small people, as you'll know, and banting is the furthest thing from their mind, except we are converting the Australian rugby team. We converted the Australian cricket team, we're now converting the Australian rugby team, but that's another. Lady came up who worked for a rugby organisation. She says, I lost 62 kilograms. And I couldn't, you can't imagine someone being 62. The second biggest reason for women. We've got another lady who's done 87 kilograms and is target of 100 kilograms. And the next guy, so that's the feedback we're getting from all people in movement. So it's just, in South Africa, it's irreversible. And I think the conference confirmed that it's just gone. And we had so much good publicity in many, many good newspapers. There's a lady, Marikos Boros, who's writing for us in Biz News, and 5 of her top 10 stories that she's ever written that have been reported and followed are on the conference. So that just shows how, and she writes for the intellectual, upper middle class businessmen in South Africa, and it's just taken off the next day.
It is. It's incredible the coverage you guys are getting out there, and hopefully soon we'll start to get a bit more coverage about it over here. I mean, I've spoken to Health and Sarie about their kind of experience of being down in Cape Town for the conference. I said it was absolutely fantastic. And Asim most recently was on Sky News doing a newspaper bit where they kind of go through all the newspaper stories and things like that. And he managed to bring up that low carb is the most effective, powerful tool that we have against obesity and type 2 diabetes on Sky News. So you got 10 million people watching this on Sky News Breakfast, and it's fantastic that we're really starting to get a movement going. And from here now, the first one's been done. Is there going to be another? What's the plan from now?
Okay, so the plan is that we are launching the online version of it on the 15th of April. So people will have online access to the conference that happens in Cape Town. We have joined forces with them to get it online. You can find out more from my blog, sugarfreekaren.com. We'll post everything there, and on Twitter and everything. We'll send you links. The other thing that we are doing, Sam, which is really exciting, is we're coming to London.
Amazing! So there will be a lot of movement going to be going on in the coming months in the UK.
Absolutely. So we're hoping to aim for November, and obviously it's dependent on getting sponsors on board and getting people behind us. But I think we've started and established quite a firm foundation, and the passion in wanting to carry this message is really what's driving this more than anything else. And I think that is why these things are happening, because this is not necessarily a business venture for us. This is really to get the message out there, to empower people to take control of their health. And not so much the people, because really we have seen the revolution has started amongst themselves. Like start, questioning their beliefs and what they were taught, and really start looking for alternative solutions that doesn't necessarily involve over-medication.
Yeah, I'm reading a great book at the moment, and it talks about what's gone wrong with medicine in the last 40 years. Well, much has gone wrong, because I trained 40 years ago and I've seen it. And we've gone from wanting to discover new knowledge to providing efficient delivery of service, and that's the problem. So we've gone from trying to prevent and understand disease to just delivering a service. And that service we're delivering has completely failed. And now we have to realize we have to go back to where we were 40 years ago and say, okay, we went this route for 40 years, it didn't work. We've got to go back to where we were 40 years ago. We've got to start questioning again. and discover real solutions, and we've got to prevent disease. And that's the key, which we all speak about. Medicine has got to understand that treatment is not the way to go. Prevention is the only way we can go. And we have the most powerful treatment against 85% of chronic disease is not related. I was not taught that 4 years ago. I would never have said that. And I think that that is the truth. And until we accept that, until we get it, that it's what we're eating that's killing us, we're in real trouble. We're not going to resolve this. We're not going to solve it. And one of the great speakers was Jason Thorne at the conference, and we haven't mentioned him because he needs to be mentioned because he's a brilliant scientist and doctor and practitioner. And he just showed that if we give diabetics insulin, we kill them. That's basically it. You cannot afford to give insulin in high doses to people with diabetes because their prognosis is worse. And we've got to realize that. And then we've got to go and look at all the other conditions. The hypertension. And the treating hypertension, I'll bet that we make it worse with medication, not better.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with statins and heart disease prevention. We've got to become much more aggressive and say, listen, the model doesn't work in diabetes, it doesn't work in hypertension, it doesn't work in heart disease, it doesn't work in obesity. What are we doing? What are we going to change? And that's the message we have to get out to the young doctors. And I also, when I do speak to my colleagues, my many young doctors in Cape Town, I say, the key is, in 5 years' time, if what you do doesn't work, you're going to be out of business because patients are going to go to find where things work. And so we have to teach them these things which actually can prevent disease. Otherwise, we're treating a generation of doctors who are completely wasting their time as far as chronic disease goes. I understand that you're treating acute medicine, they're brilliant. The training they get is fantastic. But for chronic disease, we don't have a clue.
Yeah, it really is a bit of an uphill battle at the moment with kind of governments around the world saying one thing and then highly regarded experts like yourself kind of saying another, and hopefully conferences like this will help realign kind of the strategies that the government that governments around the world are going to be implementing as well. So in terms of that, is the next stage of this movement really about trying to get governments on board and medical associations on board with this, and trying to kind of put that into their educational curriculum as well?
I think so, but I think governments are so controlled by industry that it's
very difficult
to do anything. I mean, we see that your Prime Minister David Cameron is now adopting the banking diet. At least that's what I read. Or at least he's cutting bread, which is kind of the first. And he's looking a lot healthier and a lot leaner for it. And imagine, then the British are going to wonder what's happened to their prime ministers. The first healthy-looking prime minister in the history of British Britain. I might be a little bit unfair, but
no, that's
when
true.
I think back through the history, Tony Blair's the only lean one I've ever seen, but I may be completely wrong. So I'm just talking off the top of my head. But the point is that if he makes that connection and gets it, what's he going to do next? And then the real question is, he going to take on industry or not? And in this country, in fact, the government has got behind it to some extent, in that they've introduced offal or organ meats into Parliament. Amazing. Because our parliamentarians are the biggest in the world.
Wow.
So they've at least, and I was able to speak to them, and in fact that's fired up a whole bunch of criticism. Because the real meal revolution was given to the Speaker of the House. And then everyone thought, my gosh, the government's going to change and we better be careful. So we had to take some notes as a consequence of that. So the government in South Africa is well aware of the issue. I think that by coming to London, we must focus the world's attention on this. In Cape Town, we focus South Africa's attention on low carbs. By going to London and then ultimately to Washington, D.C., we must get the rest of the world to focus.
Yeah, so we want to go to Washington, D.C. because essentially, I mean, America is the seat of the obesity epidemic. And we need to get Barack and Michelle Obama. I mean, I keep saying this, and it is a bit of a joke, but I really, really do hope that we can get them there. And just start looking at the stuff that they're teaching. You know, kids just get outside and play. No, then it's stop eating sugar, and then it's stop eating carbs, and it's a very, very simple solution. And once we can get the governments to change and to start thinking about their policies, things will start changing, absolutely. So can you get the Prime Minister there to our conference?
Yeah, I'll text him just after we finish. It'll be fine. he'll be there with bells on. Well, I'll see what Asim and I and Zoe as well, and all of our contacts can do to see what MPs we can get there. Maybe not the Prime Minister, but probably the Health Secretary or something like that. But one thing as well is that we've got the general election coming up as well, so that should be interesting.
Sorry, Sam, I've got the message for you. You see,
go on, I'll text it.
We in Cape Town we think we've started the revolution. You see, so in order for Britain to get back their credits, we've got to go back to Banting, and London is where Banting was born and lived. So we're coming to the home of Banting, and that's why Mr. Cameron needs to be there to promote the Banting diet back for the British people, because it was your diet.
That's it. Yeah, it's so funny how it is kind of coming full circle with all of this, that, you know, hopefully the next movement can start off where Banting did start originally, at number 4, the Terrace. And for anybody that is interested in the history of Banting, I did a pretty comprehensive review and a bit of a virtual history tour on the blog. So if you go to live.smashthefat.com/William-Banting, then that'll take you through to that, and you can kind of look at all the history there of where he lived, where he worked, and all that jazz. But yeah, I mean, thank you guys so much for your time today, and it's been an incredible insight into how this conference came to be, what happened, and also what's next, which is kind of the most important thing really, is where we're pushing this next. And it's fantastic to hear that it's going to be in London.
Yay!
No, thank you very much, Sam. That's fabulous. We're really looking forward to taking the conference globally.
And if anybody wants to sponsor it, please feel free to contact me at any time. Yes, anywhere, anytime. I'm willing to listen.
Absolutely.
We're not risking our lives in British pounds, by the way. That one we can't risk.
What happened there? Sorry.
But can I just come back? Thank you for British pounds. They're a little more expensive than British South African rands. But just to make the point that, this whole thing came up by chance, and that's often the great things in life. They happen by complete chance. They were not planned factors, and the stars aligned, and we were successful. And it's not going to end here, because the stars are going to align even more in ways that we can't believe. So when we started, we couldn't have believed that this would be the outcome. And I know if we go to London, the outcome will be 10-fold, 100-fold greater because of the media presence in London. It's going to make another country like Washington, D.C., it's going to make it even more. So we really just want to keep driving it. And whoever comes on board, if it's governments or if it's individual doctors, it doesn't matter. It's irreversible now. And the sooner people get on board, the less stupid they're going to look in the future.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, there's only one more thing to do, and that's to hear a smash it out from both of you. So on the count of 3, I want you to both to shout, smash it out to the camera. So 1, 2, 3.
Smash it out!
Oh, fantastic. That was probably the loudest smash it out and the most enthusiastic that we've ever had. So thank you so much. And people can find out more about the conference on the website, low-carb-experts.com. Is there another website or anywhere else where you'd like to point people at all?
can't update that web. Go to my blog, sugarfreekaren.com, or sugarfree Karen, as you guys would say. It's up there, and then Twitter. Follow Professor Noakes on Twitter. I'll give you the stuff for Twitter. So I think Twitter.
Absolutely. I think we lost you there just for a second there, Karen. There was a bit of a breakup. But yeah, just follow Professor Noakes on Twitter at Prof Tim Noakes, and you can follow Karen. I believe it's Help Diet ZA, is it?
A.
Yeah, that's the one.
Help Diet SA.
SA, not ZA. What am I talking about? So yeah, definitely follow them on Twitter, everybody, and also check out the website lowcarb-high-fat-experts.com. And otherwise, thank you so much for your time today, and I hope to see you very soon.
Yay!
Thanks so much, Sam. We'll see you very, very soon.
Very soon. Thanks, Prof, and thanks, Karen, for your time. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.